The documentary festival is actually a festival that helps to propagate conversation. It is not telling people what to think. It's giving people the information to allow them to think, which means that you have to be willing to be controversial.
Good evening, Alex.
Yeah, it's a morning actually. Well, for me,
Good morning for you. How are you?
I'm fine actually. It's the weekend, and yeah, it'll be nice just
Well,
to be able to relax a little bit. Maybe, who knows? How are you?
if people wouldn't bother you with interviews, that would be much better.
No, I don't mind that at all. Actually, as I said, I really enjoyed talking to you.
There are two things. One is how do you navigate film festivals? That's the main questions that everybody has, right? And then once you identify which film festival are the right fit for you, then how basically like yeah, how do you go about? How do you leverage that? Then
Mhm.
how do you use that in order to move on in your career or to make the best the most out of the movie that you produced? And so, but before we do that, why don't you tell me briefly about why you wanted to start a film festival? Because you're the director
Sure.
of Doc Edge, right? And you were one of the people that wanted this film festival to become a reality. And maybe also give me a little bit of information about so that somebody that is listening right now can understand what is Doc Edge as a
Sure.
film festival. What differentiates Doc Edge from other film festival?
It was 20 years ago that I attended a meeting with another friend of mine who's a documentary filmmaker. His name is Dan Shannon.
Mm,
Um, we attended a meeting where we were challenged to consider the future of the creative economy and where the creative sector needed to be, taking into consideration the current circumstances in New Zealand at that particular time. We were in a situation at that time where scripted and fictional narrative was very much the flavor. And in fact, it probably still is for many countries. However, my co-director, the co-founder, had come from a background where he did documentary and he was working and volunteer with ITFA. And he had talked to me about how there was this growth of documentary and how the industry was starting to shape up by creating marketplaces and to find new ways and opportunities for filmmakers to network, to seek funding, to seek support for their projects. Now, this sounded really great to me, especially in the country at that stage where we were starting to see what was an attack on public broadcasting.
hmm
And public broadcasting was at that time mainly where documentaries would reside.
mm,
But there was this growth in independent creative documentaries happening right around the world. And we thought here's an opportunity for us to help to build that sector and to create more ways for our filmmakers to be able to be engaged. So we decided that a way to go about doing that was to create a documentary film festival in the first instance, because you can't create opportunities unless you create demand. So you need to be able to recognize that no matter how much you say to someone that documentaries are important, until they see audiences appreciating it, they're not going to be able to see what ways they can actually engage with the ecology.
mm,
So if you're going to be a funder or you're going to be a sponsor or a partner or an investor, you need to see that there are people that are actually going to want the product. So by creating a film festival, we gave an opportunity for the audiences to demonstrate that they were looking for this product. And this product was long time coming. And that when they got the product, it was a product that they would not get enough of. So we created the documentary festival, and we were quite fortunate because 2 days after the documentary festival started was our general elections, and there was no way we would have gotten anyone to attend. But the then Prime Minister, Helen Clark,
mm,
whom you would know,
mm,
appeared at our opening to do the talk, and she brought with her three other ministers with her. And she stood up and she talked about the power of documentaries and the importance of documentaries as a creative legacy, but also as a way to be able to create discourse and dialogue between people. And that to us was an affirmation, and her appearance actually created an opportunity for people to see that this was actually something that at a very senior level was appreciated and valued. We created that in the first year and we was quite successful. But behind that was the thinking that now that we've created it, we do need to have something, an organization or a
Uh,
strategy to help to develop the industry side of it. And that's when the National Documentary Organization kicked into place. And that meant that over the last 19 years, we developed the industry program. It became the National Documentary Organization. It created forums and summits and workshops and labs and incubators to create an opportunity for us to continue to build that the creative talent. It's
mm,
interesting because over the last few years, what has happened is that the offerings change because the documentary market and audience perception of what they want has changed. In 20 years, it's changed drastically. So every other year, we're busy trying to think about how do we future-proof the industry, because there's no point having built it and having creative talent that actually can actually do the work and suddenly find that they're out of a job because they're no longer relevant. So
mm,
the continuation of upskilling
mm.
and making sure that people are relevant is a very important part of what we do.
I was curious to see if the prime minister just showed up like that, or you it was under like you guys invited the prime minister to be.
We invited a prime minister, but we knew that the prime minister was under a lot of
Mm,
pressure because she had 2 days before the elections. And we expected even if she turned up, she would just turn up to say hi, photo op, disappear. Because, it is what politicians do. They kiss babies, then they look for photo ops, right? And we were a baby. We were just born. So she had to come to kiss us, if she really cared about it, she would come. But then she came and she spoke. And by her bringing her ministers along was actually an indication as to how important it was. And the ministers were all mingling and talking to everyone else. So it's not them standing there and saying, time, we got to
mm.
get back to the hustings. That wasn't in any of that.
And you mentioned something. You actually pointed at something that I'm really interested in talking a little bit more. Is actually how you can future proof. Um,
Mhm.
uh, I'm interested in getting your perspective on how the market has changed because running a film festival 20 years, especially in the area where we went from no social media to social media being so present and many other things, like 20 years ago, you didn't have Netflix and, almost like, let's say, at least I would consider a renaissance in the documentary production field. Like before, not everybody would consume documentaries. It was only who was interested or when they would get exposed, then they will watch it. Today seems like documentary is much more in front of everybody because I think Netflix and other platform like Netflix somehow helped to see that actually it could be entertaining and not just informative, and it can help you to understand different social issues, whatever, right? What is your perception of today's market when it comes to documentary?
So, so I think that we went through a period where documentary was starting to be pretty much a new genre that everyone was starting to recognize had importance to play. It was changing, it was evolving hugely from being something like a BBC or being something
Mm,
like some people might call propaganda or instructional videos to being something that was informative, entertaining, and important to create dialogue. I think the documentary has grown from being documentaries that began as, you know, a major commercial documentary to a lot more people wanting to do documentaries because there's better access to filmmaking opportunities. You can pick up
mm,
a camera, you can pick up a cell phone, you can start thinking to yourself, I can do a documentary. And everyone started to suddenly realize that maybe their what I would consider to be, their own personal videos uh,
Mm,
can sometimes translate, because for me, there's no such thing as a bad story. There's always a good story. It's how you tell the story that
mm.
determines whether it becomes the best story that people want to listen to. So I think that when people start to realize they can pick up even the phone to make a documentary,
Mm.
and they started to realize that, then they started to honing in on exactly the type of genres. That's why genres exploded. There were so many genres all of a sudden, from what might have been the standard stock genre of, say, BBC
Mm.
or
Mm.
any of the state broadcasters, to everything from spoken word to the blue economy, to environment, to personal stories. And then the growth beyond the personal stories is actually moving into, things like crime and investigation and everything else like
Mm.
that. It's like everything. There's that you could basically go into a documentary supermarket and you can find everything on the shelves that you could possibly want.
Oh yeah.
The problem for with this is that audiences also change, because audiences' perception of what is a good documentary changes, because they start to there are different documentary audiences. There's some that are very, what I would considered to be the ones that would look for the 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 gold label, the platinum label type titles, because they have become more sophisticated. They've traveled, they've seen the world. There's certain things that they want. They want certain more in-depth and more accurate conversations. And then you have the ones who don't know a lot about documentary, and all they want is let's just entertain me. Just
Mm.
tell me about the world. And there are those who just want to be told what they want to be told. Because where we all know that there is the with anything that we do, whether it's in social media or politics or religion, there's such a thing as a cult. And I think that what the documentaries can actually, just like any other media, you can create cults around. So I want to know everything about that COVID vaccination is bad, and all of a sudden you're only looking at that, and all you go looking for in the supermarket is the same staple, and then you kind of get into conversation where you start to believe that that's all that everyone is interested in. Um, the documentary festivals have a huge and doc. Sorry, let me start again.
Ah.
The streamers have had an opportunity to expose, but the streamers themselves have actually sought to go for a certain type of documentary. There's a certain style, a certain narrative, a certain
Mm.
appeal about what a Netflix documentary or Hulu documentary might look like.
Oh yeah.
And we all know that invariably, even the ones that they purchase and acquire have a certain way of telling a story. In some ways, it is very much like a fiction narrative. Act one, act two, act three. You need to have satisfaction in of it, otherwise it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You need to lead people through the chase, otherwise it doesn't work. And look, documentaries in Europe are very slow. They are slow burning documentaries, and you could have a camera, and a camera could be panning slowly across the scene, and nothing happens. But
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the European sensibility. And it's
Mm.
very different from the American sensibility or the Asian sensibility. But that's what you get. They're differences. Um, what I think festivals have done in the last few years is that festivals have also evolved.
Okay.
Personally, I think that the evolution of festivals is that, first of all, there were very few festivals.
Okay.
And then every city, every genre had its own festival.
Mm.
And then you find that the festivals were fighting each other for audiences. So
Okay.
then festivals started going from a festival which sometimes are what I consider to be, they are unique because they're brave, they're courageous, they try to
Mm.
inspire conversation, to festivals that are afraid to inspire conversation, or afraid of controversy, because quite often you find that festivals are very much reliant on funding. They're very much
Mm.
reliant on partnerships. They're very much reliant on public interest. If there's anything controversial that is going to cause their partners to rear in, their funding to be dropped, or for
Mm.
audiences to boycott or to cancel a festival, they're going to stay away from it.
Yeah.
And then a documentary festival fails because of that. Because a documentary festival is actually a festival that helps to propagate conversation. It
Mm.
is not telling people what to think, it's giving people the information to allow them to think, which means that you have to be willing to be controversial. And
Mm.
you've got to be willing to tell points of view that people may not be comfortable with. It doesn't mean that you're telling them to think in a particular way.
Oh yeah,
You're giving them the opportunity to consider the point of views being presented.
that's beautiful. I think you summed it up everything so well, from the different kind of documentaries to actually to the market. And I think that I would agree with everything that you said, even though I don't have any experience in necessarily running a film festival. I think I come more as a filmmaker myself, and as I think oftentimes when you approach distribution different times, then you realize, well, you know, should have I thought about producing something else, since the market seems is not meeting really with the product that I have. Now, to which extent I compromise, and so those I think are the questions that then when I talk with everybody else is like, this is what's going on in every filmmaker's life. You know, it's like those questions come even if you don't stick to it, but then you do have self doubt over these things, and I think that when then like I'm talking about distribution, but I think maybe we can take one step before that, and I think every filmmaker when they approach the film festival scenes, right? I think there are maybe two or three steps. The first one is like, how do I choose which film
Mhm.
festival? I have a product, whether it's, you know, type one, two, or three, based on the one that you mentioned. I have this kind of documentary that is, you know, is probably more geared towards Netflix, or is geared more towards a different platform that could potentially be interested into this. How do you choose a film festival? That's the main question I would like to ask you. Like, what would be your suggestion to any filmmakers that is listening right now and ask himself, how do I do that? What would you say to that?
I think the starting point is actually doing enough research
Mm.
and being able to understand what your target audience is. That's really important. What is the reason behind you wanting to show a film?
Mm. Mm.
Um, because some people want to show a film because they would like the film to be seen by a particular community of people. So, for example, if you were to do a film, an impact documentary, and it particularly affects an indigenous population, it's not just about sending it and putting it in front of audiences that are far away, that have got nothing to do with your particular country. It's also being able to take it to the governments or to the NGOs or to the corporates that might make a difference. By watching that, they might change the behavior, change the way they think about something. Then it may be because you need to take it before the communities that are actually affected. So it may be other indigenous
Mm.
populations. It may be that indigenous population itself. So sometimes you might say, okay, well, I'm doing a story about the Amazon. Well, is there a film festival there? Yeah, there's a film festival in Brazil, but it's not going to be seen by the people that I'm doing the story about. And they need for them to see a positive representation of themselves on the screen is really important. But not only that, it gives them hope that someone is listening to their problem or
Mm.
their situation. So then you need to think to yourself, well, I need to find myself a way to take that product and be able to show it to these people. So it may not be necessarily going to an IDFA or Hot Dogs or Toronto International Film Festival. It may be, including that.
Mm.
But you
Mm.
need to also think about the other type of events or festivals. And festivals can be stationary. Festivals can be festivals that rotate to
Mm.
different venues and places around the country. Um, so understanding the type of audiences is going to be really important. But I think that the other thing that people need to think about when they're talking about festivals is that um, a lot of people dream the big dream for everyone. My film
Mm,
is going to be chosen by Berlin or by Cannes, and it's going to win the prize. It's going to the Sundance is going to win the prize. But we all know by looking at the most recent selections at Sundance that a majority of the Sundance titles are by people that actually have shown in Sundance before, or know
mhm,
someone at Sundance, or they're well-known filmmakers. The possibility of a unknown or relatively unknown person getting a film into Sundance is is less than what it used to be. And the same could be said about any of the other big festivals, because unless you're dealing with a topic that is really current and you're giving a point of view that's not seen before, and the festival feels that they're brave enough to put it, it's not going to get easily selected. So if you really want to make an impact for a younger filmmaker or a filmmaker that knows that there are going to be 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 documentaries put before a submission committee who may only watch 5 to 10 minutes of a film, then you're better off looking for a documentary festival that's going to make a difference. So you're going to be looking for
mm,
obviously a documentary film festival that is well respected, and well respected could be because it's got Oscar qualifying credentials. If you look for that, then you know that certain festivals have got more of an opportunity, because if you were to say, for example, if you were to go to an Oscar qualifying festival somewhere in Europe and they can give the gong to the best international feature or best feature, then you're competing with the local films, so you may be competing with a whole lot of other films. So think to yourself, where else in the world are there bubbling? Are there what I consider to be emerging documentary film festivals that are
mm,
going to give you the exposure that you require? And secondly, is that I would go to a documentary film festival that has got an award for both a local documentary film from their country and for an international documentary
hmm,
award. Because that way, the international documentary awards are not competing with the local awards, because then the local filmmakers are still have their own stab at it. But at the same time, you don't get the reverse discrimination where the awards go to the locals because they want to support the locals. So you need to
mm,
think about that as well. The other thing that I would do as a filmmaker is to look at the type of films that are being shown and the type of feedback people might be getting about a festival. I think it's important to go to a festival that has shown films of the same kind of narrative, but not necessarily the same subject. So you know that if they like point of view films, you'll always get point of view films in there. If they like music films, you'll always get music
mm,
films in there. But you need to do some research to understand that. And I think that is also really important as a again for me, and I'll still keep saying that, is that courageous film festivals
mm,
are going to be the norm. Not the norm, it's going to be the aim for everyone. If you're, it's a norm. If you're looking for a festival, you should go to, because if a festival starts to be courageous and it starts to stand out and starts to develop a personality,
mm,
then everyone's going to be looking at a festival. If your film gets to the festival, everyone's going to see your film.
mm.
A
Now,
lot there.
no, no, no. There's a lot there. It's all good, and like you couldn't frame it better. I think that my next question is like, let's say that now you basically I do everything you said, right? I get into the film festival and I decide that I'm gonna come, for example, at Doc Age, whatever film festival I choose to go. Um, Now, once I get there, what would you say to a filmmaker to help him out to leverage that opportunity as best
Sure.
as he can?
That's a really, really good question. Because I think that a lot of filmmakers think that work finishes when the film is delivered.
I was gonna say,
I
like,
I
it's
have
really
I
true.
have to
It's really true.
break that fallacy, because that's a fairy tale. Um, when you get selected to a festival,
Mm,
it's not for the festival to try to drum up all your audiences for you. Every festival has anywhere between, I don't know, 40 to 200 films. they can't do PR for every film the way you would like to do PR. So that is why impact producing is really important. And it's not meaning that you need to have a separate impact producer, but you need to have a team of people that are focused on creating and understanding as to so a film's going to say, for example, a film's going to go to Hong Kong. It's going
Mm,
to show in Hong Kong, and this is my film. So who are all the communities that would be interested in the film? I need to start thinking about that, and I like to start creating maybe a hit list. And the hit list would be something that I might share with the festival publicist or the outreach person. But I would also write to them. I would also say to them, "Hey, I've come from say the Ukraine. I'm showing a film in Hong Kong. I'll reach out to the people that are part of the Ukrainian community. I'll reach out to people that may have interest in the Ukrainian issues, and I will make sure that they know I'm coming. The film's coming. I'll give them some background on it so that they're not taken by surprise because you do have a captive audience. You
mm.
can have a captive audience if you do the work, but you do have a captive audience. You need to do the work. The work cannot be done just by the festival. Otherwise, you'll be very disappointed. So, filmmakers sometimes come to a festival, and I've traveled to so many festivals, and suddenly you go into a cinema and you're sort of expecting, oh, it's going to be full house. And you go in there and you see, okay, there's about 20, or sometimes if you are unlucky, you might have about two or three people sitting there. They are still your diehard. They really want to see the film, and you cannot ignore them. But the reason why there are fewer audiences in there is not the fault of the festival. It is
Mm,
the fact that a festival is trying to show as many films as possible, and the
mm.
filmmakers need to work with the festival to ensure that that outreach is done properly.
And that's the way you can leverage in order to maximize the let's say the exposure of the film to as many people as possible. But then
Yes.
how could that potentially become an opportunity for you to actually find distribution? Like, how do you leverage the film festival for that? I guess it's probably attached to what you just said, because if you start to talk with NGO and other people that somehow are involved in organizations, like, then those could be the people that actually will want to somehow do something with your movie. What else is there?
So a lot of people think to themselves that this if you go to a sales agent, all they're interested is actually paying audiences. But actually, sales agents are not just interested in, say, a cinema audience. They also interested to knowing if there are any particular focus groups that could
Mm,
be interested in the film. If you've got a film and you haven't created an educational kit,
mm,
um, then you probably need to think seriously in the future about doing so, because an educational kit means that you're actually guiding people that might be able to utilize the film and put it in a library so someone can actually watch the film and they can be taught, they can be led to discovery. Students and schools are very important ways and means for the film to actually continue to grow. Um, Share your screeners and your links with the local broadcasters. When you're in town, although it might be a long shot, it's still worth picking up the
mm,
phone and talking to an an exhibitor. So you know that someone's got 20 cinemas in the city. Why not pick up the phone and say, "Can I come and see you? Can I actually, drop you a link? Can I invite you to the film?"
mm,
It might not be a
mm.
film that you would originally think would fit your audiences, but come and have a look at it. Love to have you come and give me some ideas, because, they like that. They like being, included. And that's one way of doing that. Um, Reach out to sales agents and say, oh, yeah, no, here's some reviews. Or getting reviews is very important. So if you can get reviews and get people to write a review, it could be the festival person.
Yeah.
You could say to the festival person, okay, who are the people that are cinema fans and enthusiasts? It may be someone at the university. It may someone be in. There's probably someone working in newspapers that do reviews. Reach out to them and say, love to connect with you. Could you
Mm.
perhaps watch a film? And even if you don't write a review, give me a couple of lines that I can utilize about what you think about the film. You know, be
Yeah.
prepared if someone says, I actually hated your film. but that's part of the knocks and blows that you have to have, as well as all the joys that you can have as well.
Yeah.
But it's just finding different ways. People go to a festival and they got nothing to hand out. So where are your postcards? And if you don't want to do postcards anymore, so where's your QR code? Or where is your digital card where when people scan, will immediately take them to your page and give them information that they might need. Because and at the same time, it's like when you go, engage, think about the type of questions. If you have a Q&A,
Mm.
right? Uh, what a lot of people do is that they say, "Oh, I'm just waiting for my someone to ask me the question." Okay, right? Okay. What if they don't ask you the questions? You
Mm.
need to find a way to engage in the conversation. So it's like going to a beauty pageant. If someone says what would you do in your reign as Miss Documentary, you need to be able to talk about all the things that you're going to do, and you need to, if no one asks you any more questions, you need to be able to lead them to all the things that you want them to think about. Prepare yourself.
I think it is, and I'm guilty of that too. And in the beginning, you think that because you actually get to a big film festival, that's gonna do it for you. And yeah, the first time it was like you said, the experience was exactly that. And then
Yeah.
we were able to recuperate with the first movie, but still, it would have been much better if we would have done all that you just said from the very beginning and prepared like that. I think definitely.
And actually the local festivals there to help you. They're not just there to, just be a screening venue. They are
Yeah.
actually there because they actually care about your film, and actually just having conversations with them. And I know the frustration. Sometimes people say that, oh, I wrote to you guys, but you guys haven't replied. Yeah, yeah, okay. We're really, really busy, but when you get on ground, it's
Huh.
actually finding that 5 or 10 minutes with someone and having a bit of a conversation will let you understand what are the circumstances and what are the differences in that particular city or that particular country that might be different. And then you're gaining knowledge. And your first film or your current film is not going to be your last film. So everything you do is just going to help to build your knowledge. And if you're just thinking about it just as a single solitary exercise, you're going to be very disappointed.
That's really good. That's really true. That's really
Yeah.
true. That's exactly what it is.